background is in computer science, but for the last 10 years, I have been part of a research lab working on translation of technology into the clinic. And that experience really gave me the appreciation of the data. Data is gold. You cannot do anything without data. It takes huge effort to collect the data and to manage the data. Let me give you one example of what I mean. What I show here is a sample of a multiparametric magnetic resonance imaging for a patient that has prostate cancer. This is the data collected here at Brigham, and it's a unique opportunity for AI, if you think about it, because prostate cancer has high prevalence. It can be extremely deadly. We do not have good biomarkers of this disease. We do not know how to differentiate reliably from aggressive and indolent disease. At the same time, we have tremendous evidence that magnetic resonance imaging is a very promising biomarker. We have results from multi-site trials that demonstrate that. We know that radiologists can understand a lot looking at these images, but we also know that they need a lot of training to do that right. So how can we apply AI to solve this problem? Well, we don't need just the images. We also need the training data. And this is an example of a radiologist dictated report based on that imaging appearance. You can see, in a way, it's perfectly interoperable data set. And what I mean by this, you can give this text to anyone in the world. They will be able to read it. You can scribble it down on a piece of paper. It will still be readable, right? But it's very interoperable at the level of humans who are experts in their field. What is important in this report? Let's look at this. This particular sentence says that there is a finding that looks like cancer, essentially. And here on the image is where radiologists identified that finding. There's a lot more information on this report. You also know that this patient had biopsy that confirmed pathologically presence of cancer. And you know that the blood test, which is standard for all prostate cancer patients, is also noted here. You also know that it's a part of longitudinal record. This patient previously was in the hospital, and what this exam says that there is no progression. A lot of information if you can understand, if you know the field, if you can read this and make sense out of it. But it's very difficult to parse this information automatically by machine. It provides a great data set for NLP application, but not necessarily for direct training of AI tools. You may say that, well, it's just the clinic. That's how we do things in clinic, but not really. If you look at how data is collected in clinical trials, imaging clinical trials, if you look at the data collected by researchers when they complete the studies, there's a lot of heterogeneity of data, a lot of different conventions that make it extremely difficult to combine data sets across sites and across groups. There's evidence that it's so bad that up to 80% of the effort spent by data scientists is done cleaning the data and preparing the data for the training. So how can we solve this? Part of the solution is we have to agree how to store the data. And that's where the standards come into place. But it's not enough to have the standards. It's very important to implement the standards. And once the standards are implemented, it's very important to confirm that they are implemented correctly. And that's the area where we have been working on for the last 5 years. Trying to solve this problem, starting from the research point of view, but also now translating into clinical practice. At this stage, we have been supported by NIH funding. We have a number of partnerships with industry. We have a funded project with a major vendor of imaging workstations to develop these ideas and make them work. What is our contribution? Well, we started from trying to solve the problem for researchers. We wanted to be able to organize the data consistently and interoperably for the research studies. And we also wanted to have this technology and standard as accessible as possible. That's why we focused on very generic data types. We focused on open source development. And understanding instead of introducing a new standard, we tried to understand the capabilities of the existing standard. And there is a standard called DICOM, which is implemented broadly in the imaging equipment in the clinic. All of these images that you get when you visit your hospital and you get a CT can be read virtually anywhere in the world because the standard is implemented for the imaging data. It's not implemented for imaging-derived data. And that's what we are trying to resolve. So in addition to improving the standard and explaining what the standard can do, we also develop open source tools that make it easier for academics or industry to implement the standard in their platforms. And what I mean by open source is software that is not restricted by any strings. So you can use it in your commercial product without any preconditions. Or you can implement it in your research workstations and try to streamline the data collection management for your research studies. We are academics, and that's why it's very important for us to publish papers. But what we are doing differently, we publish a paper which is accompanied by a publicly available data set that is stored using the standard representation, not just for the images, but also for the data that we glean from the images. Finally, in order to evaluate the compliance of different tools with the standard, we have organized a demonstration and connectathon at a major radiological conference where we provide a venue for anyone interested to learn about the standard, to test their implementation, or to test interoperability with another platform. They're welcome to join and do that at this open venue. Why industry should care? Well, it's not just about having clean data, which is usable for AI application, which is, of course, very important. But there are many other reasons why it's highly relevant. As AI becomes more widespread, there are many different entities, labs, companies, research groups that develop AI solutions, and it's quite interesting to be able to integrate these solutions quickly into the clinical workflows. If you want to integrate a number of solutions, you need to be able to enable them to talk to each other, and you need to have a standard. You can develop your own homegrown standard to do that, or you can look perhaps the existing standard, which is already adopted around the world, can help you in this task. If you support standardized capture of the data in your product can have a huge competitive advantage. Some vendors say that, well, radiologists never ask us to have our data interoperable. That's not quite true. Radiologists do want to have that data accessible. They want to be able to leverage these annotations and measurements that they capture in their clinical work, in their research studies. So if you can generate a data set which can be later explored, understood, and repurposed for research purposes, it will be a huge advantage for your product. Also, no matter how big is your healthcare enterprise, there will never be enough data at a single site. In order to make consistent and reliable tools, you need to compare how your tool performs across different sites, in a setting of multi-site trial. And you will need to combine data across sites, and again, you need the standards to do that. Finally, we can also learn something from history. If you look at the recent success of AI in self-driving cars, think about it. The technology at this point is so good that we trust these cars to drive down the streets. And sometimes accidents do happen. If AI is successful in the healthcare industry, we will also have accidents and failures, inevitably. We will want to understand why these accidents happen, how to prevent them in the future, and how to help us as a community to deal with these accidents more reliably and robustly to help the patients. We can also learn about the history of DICOM. Back about 20 years ago, it was the initiative of researchers who were not satisfied with the variety of formats produced by their imaging equipment. The researchers approached ECRIN and FDA, and the result of that conversation was that the industry voluntarily decided to adopt the standard for their imaging equipment. Perhaps with the increasing needs for the volume of data and quality of data, something like this perhaps can happen for the annotations and imaging-derived data. So what are the next steps for me? We started this project from a purely perspective of imaging research scientists. We wanted to help organize the data and manage the data. And I think we can make good progress in that direction. We are currently scaling up from small data sets, trying to apply this to multi-site clinical trial in prostate cancer imaging and see how this technology can help better reuse that data and also test our tools. Also, it's not enough to have the standardized data. Once you have the standardized data, how can I understand what this data means? What are the interfaces that I can provide to leverage the data fully? So you might have heard about the Cancer Genomic Commons, that initiative that happens at the NIH level. Nothing like that exists right now for the imaging data. We would be very interested to work on that. We want to also specialize into a more closer to clinic applications. So right now we look at structured reporting for prostate imaging, PIRATES, and we are working with a commercial partner to develop this open standard and supporting tools. How industry can help here? Well, we are not able to integrate these tools into clinical products. That's not our role. Our role is purely research. But at the same time, we have a lot of expertise understanding the standard. We can work with the industry. We'll be very happy to work with the industry to propagate the standards into the clinical tools. We are also open to consult on the capabilities of the standard in general, and we would be very happy to hear your feedback about what we do. Thank you for your attention.